All right. Jeevan Singh, thank you so much for being here. It's so exciting to have you in the Facebook group going live and
Mm.
ask you some questions. I think we've known each other a few years and we met in Mexico
On the
randomly
beaches.
on the beaches. We just happened to be there at the same time. Star-crossed friends. And
Mm.
yeah, I love your practice, flower hand wellness, flower hand medicine. Sorry,
It's
why am I
actually my
blanking?
name now.
It's your name now. It
Yeah,
started out flower hand medicine
Flower Hand
and
Wellness.
flower hand wellness, and now it's
Hmm.
jeevansingh.co. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just Jeevan Singh.
Just Jeevan Singh.
That's my name. If you look online, if you look up Jeevan Singh, it's like the Jim Smith of India. So it's like a name that's often taken. Fun
Good to
little
know. Yeah, and you are an expert in a pelvic wellness, I would say. And you've been teaching steaming and I would say womb care for a while now, and also have been doing a lot of somatic work more recently, which I'm excited to ask you about. And yeah, anything else people should know about you?
No, that's good. We both went to the same school.
I
Well,
did.
I'll get to the school part, but yeah, we both studied Chinese medicine and yeah, and it's fun to see like the trajectories that can take you.
Yeah, and you have a doctorate in Chinese medicine and a master's in mental health, which is integrative mental health, which is very, very cool. And we'll get a little bit more into that. So, and not even to mention all the things you did before school, which are many,
Mhm.
and many other talents. So, but I'm curious. I don't know that I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to hear you tell the story again of how you got into natural medicine, what that was about for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah. Well, trigger warning. I mean, I won't get into the details, but definitely my own traumas, um, a few different experiences. So let's see, flashback to my late 20s. And I was living in North Portland, and in my Saturn return, and it was kind of bookended by these handful of really intense experiences. Two of those were getting held up at gunpoint, not once, but twice. And I also was in a pretty gnarly rollover accident towards the end of that period. And after that accident, it was, yeah, we were driving down the road, Southern California, the sun was setting, and a baby deer had run out into the road. And as it was running, my friends were like, oh my God, look. And there was a mama deer on the road, dead. And we swerved out of the way, and the baby came, and just, it was all, yeah, we hit the baby and then rolled over in our car. And we're very fortunate to walk away from that. But I remember the first thing the paramedic said was like, oh, somebody just died on the same stretch of road from the same kind of accident just last week.
Wow.
So it was one of those experiences that really felt like not only did I roll over upside down in that moment, but my whole life kind of went upside down. And up until then, I was really into being a musician, writing poetry, considering myself an artist, and really trying to figure out, like, how do I survive in the world as somebody who makes art or as somebody who's a poet. And so for a long time, I was like, oh, I'll just go back to school. I'll get an MFA in creative writing. I'll teach college or something. And after that accident, I was really jarred from it. And I feel like I spent a few months just really walking close to death like the concept and the realness of death. And as I was looking into going back to school, it just totally didn't resonate anymore. And I had told myself for many years, if I had a second life, I would be a natural medicine doctor. And so it felt like that second life came after that accident. It was like, yo, girl, this is your life. You get to have it right now. And I almost marked that accident as like the ending of a first life, a former life, beginning of this phase of life. So I applied to Chinese medicine school, got in, and and a year later, I started a 6-year program in Chinese medicine and integrative mental health.
Wow. Yeah. And I know you've talked about kind of reclaiming lineages. And was that a part of, for you, going into natural medicine?
Yeah, so I have this, I've always been, I'm really curious actually if other people have ever felt this, where you feel like somewhere in your lineage, there's this energy that's trying to express itself, almost like a plant that's trying to bloom, but it's waiting for the right conditions. And medicine really felt like that for my lineage. My Indian grandfather on my dad's side was a tailor by trade, but he loved medicine, and he would Ayurvedic medicine, and he would like make his own herbal medicine and dry herbs and kept like journals on it. And my dad's kind of like a scientist, like home scientist that I feel like that was trying to come through, and these were the right conditions for it to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you making your own relationship with Ayurveda specifically?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love Ayurvedic medicine. And, I think that I considered studying Ayurveda, but there's so many white folks teaching it, and same with Chinese medicine. But something about it hitting so close to home of your own culture was really hard for me it was like, I've been waiting for my teacher, so that will come at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I can
I'm sure
relate
you
to
can
that.
relate.
Totally. Yeah, it's fun. It's a funny thing to kind of find that tradition someplace else and then kind of wind your way home.
Yes.
I think that I bet a lot of people could speak to that, actually. Beautiful, beautiful. I really want to ask you about this post you made on Instagram. You have the most beautiful Instagram also. If anybody is on Instagram, they should definitely follow you at jeevansingh.co.
I'll probably come after Jeevan Singh at some point. Just keep changing it.
It's all good. Iterative. You talked about during this time when we're at home, we're kind of forced to be at home, that you are finding a lot of joy in making home and kind of cleaning, and also the ritual of cleaning out home and beautifying it. And I know beauty is a very deep part of your, I would say, spirit, or the way that you are in the world, and how you do medicine. But you also made the connection with embodiment, I think, with being in your body. I know that's a big part of how you work with the somatic work and even with the pelvic work. I don't know that you would even distinguish those two trajectories. So I just wanted to ask you to speak more on that. And I think you talked a little bit about it in your post, how our homes, and I would say even our bodies, can feel unsafe. And I think we all know that there are homes right now that are unsafe for the people living in them. And it's even more intense with the pandemic forcing us inside. And and just what that process has been for you, what it's been like in the clinic helping other people embody their bodies, but also that relationship between our physical spaces and our bodies, what you were talking about there, if you could dive a little bit deeper for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess, the first thing for folks who maybe didn't see the post, I wrote about my home life as a child and how unsafe and chaotic it often felt. And that home, and I would say home, using home as my body and as like the physical space of home, took a while for me to return to. And, I think it's so common that for anyone who's experienced any sort of trauma, which is most people at some point in their lives, especially folks of color, that it's so natural for the body, for the spirit to leave the body, for some part of us to fragment or to go away, or to get kind of frozen or stuck in time. And so it's been so much of my own personal healing and the healing that I offer, or help other people facilitate, to come home to their bodies as a place that's safe, as a place that gets to be theirs on their terms. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And so that's work that I've been doing for quite a while now. I would say a decade, in terms of my own kind of healing trajectory in the last almost 6 years in my practice. And yeah, during this pandemic, it's been so many things for so many different people, and it's really been hurting my heart to read how many people are, home is not a safe place. Home, for children and people in partnership, that not everybody experiences a safe place as home. And so it made me think, as I've been staying home, and I'm somebody, if you were to know me, in fact, my brother just came to visit a few months ago, and he was like, told my wife again, like, no, really, you don't understand. My sister, like, she doesn't get married. Like, she was never gonna get married. She was never gonna have like a house. She was like very flighty. My whole personality until the last few years was like always traveling, like not gonna settle down. And a lot of that was around leaving, not being connected to home, because home was never safe. So during this pandemic, it's been so healing to be home. And I've really been feeling into our bodies as being these kind of microcosms of the earth, and how so much around this pandemic is how we've mistreated the earth, how we have disrespected the earth, the way that we have maybe taken advantage of the earth, and then reflecting on our own bodies, like, how have we not been in alignment to our own bodies? How have we been like pushing too hard, working too much, not listening when our bodies are trying to give us messages? And on top of that, capitalism, and all the messages that come from that, especially for folks of color. It's so deep, the wounding around our bodies. And I see that as going right, in line with the wounding around the earth. So yeah, I think healing our bodies is healing the earth on some level.
Oof, yeah, so deep, so wise. I think about that all the time. And and I think that's what the somatic work is so good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that why you have gotten into the somatic work, to work on that level with people?
It was all a mistake. Actually, nothing is a mistake, but it was a very unexpected path that I found myself on. I mean, I would say that there's somatics in modern kind of psychology. And for folks who don't know what somatics is, it's a field of now it belongs to psychology, but originally it wasn't. And it's basically just how our whole beings are this unified experience of mind, body, spirit, that our physical informs our emotional, vice versa, that you can't really like separate those apart. And so I started a mental health program 5 years ago, and I had no idea that it was like a somatic program. I just knew that people were crying on my table when I was doing womb massage on them, and that I was like, there's something happening here, and I want to understand it. I want to understand these like deep emotional releases that are happening, because otherwise I was like a deer in the headlights. I'm like, what's going on? And I was kind of freaked out by big emotions, to be totally honest. And I had no communication skills. I was like such a baby. So I really credit that time, 4 years in that master's program, to learning about somatic healing and to learning about being with another person in all of their emotions and energy. And let's see if I wrote a few notes. The type of somatic therapy or somatic practice that I do is called Hakomi. And that word's actually a little bit, there's a lot of debate around that word right now, because it's actually a Hopi word. And the modality was started by white guys. Somebody dreamed up this word, and apparently they had permission to use it, but that was in the 70s. So I sometimes call it mindfulness-based, body-centered somatic healing. That's really a mouthful. But anyways, we work with applied mindfulness, which is from my culture, my Indian culture, and working within the body, like going through. Okay, can I give an example, Adriana, for folks?
I would love you to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're going into that, into the specifics. So please.
Yeah, I feel like, it's hard to understand until we actually experience it. But, one example I like
Part of the point.
Right? It's totally.
Part of the point.
Totally. You're walking around back when we could just bump into people on the street or in the grocery store, and
back in the day
when you were like yelling across many feet of distance. And imagine you're like walking down the street and you bump into a friend and they ask you, how's it going? And just like where immediately that response comes from. I mean, I would say for many people, we kind of just whoop. I know for myself, my automatic is to just go into my head and do like, how am I? And then how different, and you can practice this, maybe even asking yourself, like, how am I? Noticing how that's different when you pause and actually check out the sensations in your body. Like right now, I'm like, oh, a little bit of heart beating, a little nervous, but I feel excited too, then it gives us a whole different range of information. So part of my work is helping folks to reintegrate their knowledge, their self-awareness, their own innate wisdom through their bodies, not just coming in through thoughts alone. Yeah.
I've been noticing how not doing, like literally being at home, and the slowness of not really having, like, I can't have the immediate gratification of like, oh, I want this thing, I'm going to go to the store and get it, or I want to do this thing, I'm going to go do it. My life has slowed down considerably, and I think I knew this intellectually before, but actually having the experience, it has allowed me to feel my body in a totally different way that I couldn't do without living at the pace of my life, like my life force, like my physical body. And I think that's, I think we miss that part of it, that it's, it's easy to talk about feeling into the body, but how often do we actually do it? How often do we take the time to do it? And also, how often do we think of it as a process instead of like, oh, I did this mindfulness thing, or I do mindfulness 15 minutes a day and then I go do my day. Mindfulness is another task, but it's really can be a way of life. And I wonder if you feel this too. I feel like it's a prerequisite or maybe just a requisite for healing, that you can't actually, you can take all the supplements that you want, you can get all the therapy that you want, but if you're not living it out in your body, it's not actually the thing. What do you think about that?
I mean, exactly. That is, I feel like you're hitting the nail right on the head. And I just love, Adriana, what you said just about getting to have permission right now to go at the pace of our bodies. Because you're so right. Like, there's this kind of external metric set of like how we should be moving in the world, 40 hours a week or whatever. And so we get used to these kind of external forces. I mean, how could we not? That's like how so many of us have been raised. And I think that's true for healing. It's like, okay, the pill, like take the external thing or kind of like do the thing, and then I'll feel better. And what I've noticed is that, I mean, that's why I incorporate mindfulness so much, is because when it's just coming from like the thought level, we're barely tapping into the underlying reasons why we do what we do. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit before about, especially for folks of color, living as folks of color in the world, in our racist culture, that there's an importance there to kind of connect with our bodies and connect with the earth. You didn't say it exactly that way, but you're making that connection. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that process for people of color, specifically for women of color. I think a lot of people have made that connection between how the earth is treated and how women of color specifically are treated as property, as commodity.
Exactly.
And it's painful. It's a painful subject. But yeah, how have you seen in the clinic, or what thoughts do you have, or body experiences do you have with that? I guess maybe what I'm saying is encouragement or words of wisdom for people who maybe just find it really challenging to connect with their bodies, and especially when that it's not always safe to actually listen to their bodies, and live according, because one thing I've noticed is that when you're really living according to what your body is saying, it's very radical. Actually, it's very anti-establishment. It's anti-capitalism. It's anti all these systems that we're supposed to adhere to. So to be a person of color doing that is incredibly radical, and I think scary to a lot of people. So I'm curious, what your thoughts are on that.
I love that question. I love these questions are so rich, and I think it's so important to name that it's not simple for everybody to go towards their bodies. And in fact, it may be harmful to like just drop somebody right into their body full force if they're not used to going there. So I always am, first of all, just really like all about starting where we are. And so a lot of work that I do with people is just identifying, like, even dissociation, if somebody's disconnected from their body, instead of me trying to guide them into connection, we actually just like are with the dissociation, and that's part of my Hokomi training, is like that we are, that there's nothing wrong with you. And so I just really want to, whoever is listening, if that's you, if you find yourself being disconnected or dissociating or having a hard time going towards your body, I'm guessing that there's probably some protection coming in there, and that's actually some wisdom from your body to keep you safe, because there wasn't always safety there to begin with. So I think just acknowledging that and really creating some space and some softness and gentleness around that. And there's a concept that I like to talk about sometimes called self-friendship. That's what I call it, because I noticed in my 20s just how mean I was to myself. And I'm like, dang, I treat my friends so much better than I treat me. Like, what's that about? And so for the last decade, I've really been doing kind of this work of noticing internal thought processes, and then just like bringing some gentleness, bringing some compassion, and asking myself, like, if I were my friend, what might I say? So I think that to begin with, and to start small, if you can work with a practitioner, and that's awesome. And if you can't, finding small ways to touch yourself. Touch is huge in trauma healing and in body-centered healing. Like, touch brings us back into the present moment. Touch brings us into our bodies. I like to sometimes do a Abhyanga, which is an Indian Ayurvedic self-massage. And so it's cool to kind of reach, if you know where your people are from, if you know anything about healing practices or can look them up around your culture. I found that to be a really inspiring way of connecting to my lineage, connecting to my ancestors, connecting to my body. And I would say some of my favorite ways to do that is through pelvic steaming. So that is a practice, basically a sauna for your vagina and pelvic bowl. And it comes from many, many places in the world. And it's really just so powerful. I just led a steaming ritual last week, and I got a bunch of messages afterwards of people who just had really big emotional healing through that. So gosh, I could list a lot of things, Adriana, because there's so many wonderful ways. But I would say, starting small, going towards bit by bit, working with somebody if you can, and just like establishing safety, that might be like looking around the room and just letting your nervous system know, like, it's safe here. There's no threat. I'm safe. It's safe to be in my body. This is my body. It's nobody else's body. And I found that that ancestral healing happens through this relationship with our bodies, because we are carrying the spirits and the DNA of who we come from and where we come from. So I really see kind of the direct connection and also the more like energetic ways that we are healing our lines through our present moment experiences.
Yeah, so real. And I remember you doing a course called The Body Oracle, which sounded so awesome. And just making that connection between both, like once you start, even just at the very beginning of that process of checking in and restoring, right? Like even just the telling yourself you're safe and changing those stories of like how we talk to ourselves. Like you said, you were your own mean girl, and
Yeah, I was.
that it's like that it starts to bring out truth. That our guts really do have that truth feeling. And when we aren't connected, we kind of rob ourselves from knowing that truth, right? Like, and sometimes it's by design, right? That it's too hard to know the truth.
Yeah.
If you're experiencing abuse or experiencing an abusive society. So, but what a powerful thing to have a truth telling device that we inherit, that is our birthright. What a what an instrument of change, I think of, in that. So that's amazing. It's amazing work. And yeah, you kind of alluded to some of the transformation, or like a little bit of like what somatic healing or like somatic work can look like in just a simple act of asking yourself, how do you feel? Are there any other, like, can you walk us through what that looks like in the clinic, like when you're working with somebody? Yeah, what kind of things have you seen shift, I guess, in the clinic?
Oh my gosh, so many huge deep shifts happen. And yeah, in terms of walking through, do you mean like kind of how I work, or are you curious about the ways that people may transform?
I'm curious about both, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, totally. I know it feels kind of mystical sometimes trying to explain like what happens behind closed doors, and I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever feel like that. Yeah, and it's like it's a good practice. I'm like, let me take you with me. Come into this is actually the office I've been working in. So yeah, so oftentimes most people come to see me for pelvic healing. And that may be that they are experiencing intense menstrual pain. Maybe they had some sort of birth trauma. Maybe they have fibroids or endometriosis. So many things in the world of reproductive health and pelvic health. And so I would say that some people come because of some physical aspect of what's going on. Some people come for more emotional based healing or self-exploration. But I would say more often than not, folks are like, I have this physical thing. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, let's be with that. So, say it's menstrual pain. I will do like a full intake. We'll really learn we'll go through like every single detail about their period for an hour and a half, and also about their lives and where they come from and what their hopes and dreams are. So it's really like a pelvic and emotional wellness intake and getting to know each other. And then we will kind of just walk towards, we'll do one of two things. Sometimes I offer like therapeutic body work, such as internal pelvic floor work called holistic pelvic care. I do womb massage. So there's kind of this hands-on part. And then there's also exploring in mindfulness a person's own body. So yeah, so it looks like basically they're sitting or lying down, and I ask them to close their eyes, and I guide them into like almost like it feels like a meditation, but what it's doing is helping to access the subconscious parts of our beings. So imagine, I won't use my microphone, but imagine this spray bottle It's like, you know, like an iceberg. And this is just the tip up here. And the tip up here is everything that we are consciously aware of. Like, I like chocolate. I don't like this. Like, I keep getting, you know, stuck in this pattern. I don't know why. Underneath the iceberg tip is everything underwater that is driving that behavior. And so what's underwater is also like our memories. It is deep childhood wounding. It is the ways that things were modeled to us from our parents or caretakers. And so there's all of this stuff under here that we are like, we're only aware of 5% of what is actually coming in. So the work that I do with people is trying to get into a calm enough state where they actually were opening up the neural network. We're kind of like opening up this, we're kind of like going underwater together and checking out what's actually happening in the subconscious. So an example, let's see. Gosh, so many. I mean, I'm just thinking even today, like, I'll give an example for myself and a session I had with a Hakomi therapist. And it was very recent. It was a few weeks ago. And I was feeling really upset about how much TV I was watching. So I'm not, usually I haven't owned a TV in 20 years and we just bought a TV. And I was like, feeling upset, like, oh my gosh, I'm just like watching this TV every night for like 2 hours, 3 hours. And that's not me. What's wrong with me? And so my rational mind might be like, yeah, TV sucks. Like, you get brainwashed, you know, having all these ideas about TV. And yet in the session, we dipped underneath and were able to identify like, oh, yeah, like when I was little, and I mean, this would never have come up unless I was doing mindfulness and somebody was guiding me through it. When I was little, like I loved TV. I mean, like so many kids of the 80s, I was like raised by TV. TV was pleasurable, it was fun, it was imaginative. Like I totally forgot that. And all of a sudden, all these memories started surfacing of like, my dad really like flipping out if there's anyone kissing on TV and telling me that's dirty, like go take a shower, like really intense, like kind of traumatic memories of like, I mean, kind of, you know, verbal abuse. And I was like, whoa, I somewhere along the lines made the connection between TV. If I watch TV, I'm a bad person. And, you know, it was very emotional to make that connection. And it seems so, you know, our rational minds would be like, no, you're not a bad person if you watch TV. But my little person self like didn't know that, you know, when an adult is, our wires get kind of crossed sometimes when we're small. And so a lot of work that I do with folks ends up kind of showing like, oh, wow, this menstrual pain, like this endometriosis, you know, 20 years ago, there was sexual trauma, repeated sexual trauma that never got addressed. And now we're seeing like there's a connection there. Or, you know, menstrual cramps. And I'm trying to think like there's so many, you know, each person's so different. It's kind of like walking into their own dream space together. And once that happens, once we like pull in that awareness into our conscious minds, then things really start to shift in kind of like magical ways.
It sounds like you get to tap into people's resilience too, and their strength, right? It's easy to talk about the trauma, and forget that even those places where we get wound up that's where our strength is, our resilience to persevere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it sounds like you get to uncover that with people.
Yes, yes. And not all of our sessions are around, I have sessions with people around pleasure, and like being
Yes.
with pleasure, or around rest. I've had several sessions now where people will like take naps in our session, or like just rest their eyes, and we're just like staying with like, how does it feel to like really let yourself rest? Like notice how
Wow.
it feels in your body. So it's really cool. I love it.
That's very cool. Has
Yeah.
it changed at all with people kind of working, like doing this work within the context of the pandemic? Have you seen that shift people's experiences at all?
Like in terms of the themes that people are working on, or
Yeah,
like working
maybe, or
virtually.
just, yeah, all of that. Like if there are any common themes showing up for people around their
Mhm.
struggles.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say just there is this kind of collective trauma experience happening. And when we think of trauma is something that's happening too much, too fast. It's like overload
Mm,
for the nervous system, that our nervous systems or our spirits don't have enough time to actually like
mm,
digest and assimilate what's happening. So I've definitely, folks who I've been seeing for a long time, suddenly like a resurgence of
mm,
anxiety, fear, worry. And if they're not consciously aware, I really like, gosh, it's been such a good remembering that even if we don't think we're stressed out, like our bodies will tell us, you know, if we are grinding our teeth at night, or, holding our breath a lot, or noticing however we tend to feel stress. um, I've definitely been seeing that. But I've also been seeing folks, especially my clients of color, just like really um, being like really embracing the slowness and getting to be with themselves right now. And it's been fun just like translating work to virtual, like having people
mm,
use props in their home for some of the healing work, and getting
mm,
to have them, if I can't touch them, having them do self-touch and seeing what
mm.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people who might watch this in kind of working simply with themselves and their bodies during this time?
Yes. Yeah, totally. I guess first, kind of like what I mentioned before, is just to like
Mm,
really be gentle with wherever you're at. If you're like watching a lot of TV, eating a lot of cookies, like whatever the thing is that you might be like, I don't usually cope this way. 'Cause I just noticed that for myself, and I was like, oh, you know what? That's okay. Like to be, just in it right now. So I just want to like give a lot of space around that. And then in terms of kind of managing some of the stress of the pandemic, um, you know, one tool that I really like is square breathing. And I don't
mm,
know if have you ever done it before, Adriana?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you taught it here? Anything to people
Mm-mm.
about
I
it?
haven't.
Yeah, it's so simple, and it's a way of helping to kind of balance the autonomic nervous system. And basically, do you want to do a few breaths together?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
do it.
so what we're gonna do is we're gonna breathe in to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 4, and hold to the count of 4. We can just do a few that way, and you can do this however long or short you need to. I have asthma, so I like tend to the shorter side, but some people can take really big breaths and pauses. And so yeah, let's start with just taking a breath out. And when you're ready, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, pause. pause, 2, 3, 4. Let's do one more. In, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. And then you can keep doing that for a few minutes. I also like to put my hands on the side of my rib cage and to just breathe into my hands. And not really like with any counting, but just noticing. I notice that my ribs can get really stuck. And one of the dudes in the trauma healing, Bessel van der Kolk, talks about how he looks at, but I love this. It's like he looks at patients that come in the room and notices their rib cage, and he says that the first thing in kind of healing anxiety or stress or trauma is to help kind of open up the ribs. So
yeah.
You
feel that. Yeah, just even that little bit of breathing is so soothing. So amazing to loosen up that breathing mechanism.
Yes, agreed. And I'm going to be actually making a little guided meditation on my website probably this weekend. So I will share that with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So great. So much good content.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here. Is there anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Just that, if folks have any more questions, they're welcome to reach out. And I am offering sliding scale sessions right now.
Very
so
cool.
That has been a mini one. So I know everyone's kind of in it right now, that I really wanted to make it a little more accessible. And I'm also so happy to share some resources. Maybe I can send you some links, Adriana.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And people can sign up for working with you on your website?
Yes.
Gotcha. And the website is jeevansingh.com or .co?
It's flowerhandwellness.com.
Okay, cool.
Everything. Yeah. It's
working it out.
The old one. So I'll send you the link. And and I post things. I'm making a few videos slowly at the pace of my body, making some Instagram TV videos. So those should be coming too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And the Instagram again is at jeevansingh.co, JEVANSINGH.co. And it looks like we got one comment from Karanda, but she's not here anymore because she was listening to her body and went on a bike ride.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's cool. So thanks again so much. This was a great conversation. I'm sure people will really enjoy it once they get a chance to watch it. And thanks for being here. It was such a pleasure.
And thank you for having this amazing space. I can't wait to see how it grows.
Me too. Thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you. Thanks, Adriana.
Bye. Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the sun.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Enjoy your body.
You too.